Welcome to my beginning watercolor tip 16, mixing greens part 2. In beginning watercolor tip 15, mixing greens part 1, I focused on mixtures that were derived from convenience greens or greens that are pre-mixed coming out of the tube. For beginning watercolor tip 16 part 2, I'll focus on mixtures that are derived from greens that have been mixed using yellow and blue combinations. There's no science behind the colors that I chose for these color cards. The focus of this is just to illustrate what's possible when you mix greens, and I just chose some colors out of my palette. I think mixing greens is one of the mixtures that people find challenging sometimes, especially in landscapes, and I get asked questions about mixing greens frequently. And I think one of the things is we're so used to seeing green as they come out of the tubes in these convenience colors, and that's what we tend to think of when we think of green. The reality is when you really start looking at a landscape in nature, even florals, there's a lot of neutrality involved in the colors that are there. Even though there are very bright greens that occur in landscapes and in nature, especially sunlit scenes, a lot of times they get their intensity because they're positioned near very cool colors or neutral colors. This first color card begins with a mixture of ultramarine blue and aureolin to give me my green mixture. So in the center of the card, I'm going to make a mark of ultramarine blue and aureolin. And then I'm going to make a mark between the two, or below the two, horizontally, that is the green mixture. So I'll mix these two together on my palette. And I'm just going to mix them till I get a green that I'm happy with. As I mix this, if you look on the insert card, you can look there in the middle, you can see the marks of the ultramarine, the aureolin, and then the resulting green mixture below them. So on the right side of this card, on the top right, I'm making a mark of royal blue, and that's the color I'm going to use to take it to the cool side. And royal blue, as I've said in some other videos, is a PB60 pigment, and some of the other manufacturers call it indanthrone blue, indanthrine blue, or delft blue, but they're all PB60. And on the left, I'm using pyro red, and that's the color that I'm going to use to warm up my mixture of green. So on the bottom, as I did on my other cards, I'm going to let these colors just mingle on the paper. And you see how by looking at the insert on the card, you can see I get some grays and some muted blues and muted greens and reds. You can get quite a variety. And then I'm going to mix some colors here on my palette. So I'm warming the green up right now with a little bit of red. And I'm going to make two warmer tone marks to the left of the yellow and blue marks that are in the center. So you can see right to the left of the blue mark, it's a bit warmer green. It's a little bit more neutral, and but it still has a green tone. And then the one right next to it has a little bit more red in it and has a pinker tone to it. Now I'm adding the royal blue to cool this mixture down, and you can see the blue green that I get as a result of that mixture. I'm going to mix the ultramarine blue and the aureolin again, but this time with a heavier concentration of pigment, so that I can make a darker mark on my color card. So what I'm doing is mixing a darker valued green using the same two colors. And then I'm going to take some of this pyrrole red. I'm going to mix it in. And it's going to give me a dark valued green that leans toward the warm side. But it's a very neutral color that I'm putting out. It's dark and it's neutral. Now I'm going to add some royal blue to the mixture and take it more to the cool side. And you can see I get this very dark valued cool tone, leaning very much towards blue-green. Now my next mixture is going to be using aureolin again and cobalt blue. So I'm going to make a mark with my cobalt blue. And now I'm going to make a mark with my aureolin. And then I'm going to mix the two. And this is going to give me my green. This isn't that far off from ultramarine blue and aureolin, but it's a little bit brighter green. It's a little brighter. That cobalt blues with the aureolin makes a brighter green than the ultramarine to start with. Now I'm going to take my quinacridone rose. So quinacridone rose is a cool red, but it's still warmer than green, so it's still warming up the mixture. And then I'm going to take royal blue again and use that to cool it down. And again, you can see as I put some water on these brush marks that I've put there, you can look at the inserted card in the middle there and see how these colors mingle and mix on the paper and what the result is there. Now I'm going to take some of my green mixture and mix it with the quinacridone rose, and it's going to warm it up a bit and makes it kind of a light colored gray, warm gray. If I add a little bit more quinacridone rose, it picks up that pinkish rose tint. It's a little hard to see on the card, but it's taking that green towards the warm side. And now I want to take some of the royal blue and put to that green mixture, and it's going to take it to the cool side. And if you look in the color card, it's up in the center again. If you look at the two brush marks between the yellow, the aureolin, and the royal blue on the far right, you can see that you basically have a green blue and a blue green chip. And those can be very nice colors to use in the distance of a landscape to indicate mountains or trees or something. It's a nice, cool, subtle color. Now I've mixed a darker green by using more pigment in my mixture, and I'm mixing that with a quinacridone rose, and you can see that I get a nice dark neutral green. It's very much on the warm side. And when I take that mixture and add some royal blue, now I get this nice dark cool tone. I apply that. It's a very nice dark valued blue-green. So for my final color card here, I'm going to use a combination of aureolin once again. I used aureolin for all three of these yellow-blue mixes. And I'm going to mix it with Peacock blue, which is a Holbein color. And Peacock blue is made with the pigment PB15 along with PG7. So it's kind of the PB15 is the same pigment used for phthalo or Windsor blue, and then the PG7 is a green, so it's kind of a rich blue-green color. And I'm going to make my marks here on the page with the aureolin and the Peacock blue, and then I'm going to make a mark of the mixture, and it's a fairly bright green. It's almost like a permanent green is what I get. To warm this mixture up, I'm going to use burnt sienna, and to cool it down, I'm going to use cobalt blue. I'm going to make my brush marks here with the cobalt blue. And I need to put a brush mark of the green down. And then I'm going to take some water. I'm going to let these mix on the page. You can see by looking at the inserted card some of the nice colors that you get there when you move towards the warm or towards the cool side with these colors that I'm using. Now I'm going to take this mixture and add some burnt sienna to this green mixture to warm it up, and I'm going to make my two brush marks there between the blue and the burnt sienna. And if you look at the inserted card, you can see that those two brush marks, one it's leaning towards the green side still, but it's neutral, and then the second mark is a much warmer mark that's right beside the burnt sienna. And now I'm taking the cobalt blue and cooling that down, and you can see the nice blue greens that I achieved with that mixture. Now I'm going to take a heavier concentration of pigment to get my dark valued brush marks that I'm going to put down. So there I've got my darker green, I put the burnt sienna in it, and that gives me a warm dark value. And then I'm going to take that mixture with some more cobalt blue and get a little bit more of this mixture here. And now I'm going to make a dark valued cool green, and that's kind of a green blue but very dark value. And that completes the bottom row. So at the top I have my 3 cards that utilize convenience greens off my palette, and at the bottom I have the 3 cards that utilize mixtures of yellow and blue. So here's the completed chart from this exercise in a close-up shot with using a camera. And take a look at the far right, at the top right and the bottom right, how close the mixtures are that came from those 2 different approaches. The first one at the top uses a permanent green, and the second one at the bottom is using a mixture of Peacock blue and aureolin. And the top card is using burnt sienna to drive it towards warm, as is the bottom card. However, on the top one we're using ultramarine blue to drive it towards cool, and on the bottom we're using cobalt blue. But if you look at the results, the color mixtures that mingled on the paper, and then you look at the brush marks that have been put down, even the dark value brush marks, very similar tones are achieved using these 2 different approaches. I'm going to finish this up by showing another painting, and this one is painted with all greens, and I use a combination of warm and cool tones to make some areas feel like they're back in the shadows and other areas out on sunlight. And this whole painting is done with green tones and the white of the paper. If you look at the middle of this composition towards the top and the area between the flower shapes, you'll see that I've used cooler greens there to give the suggestion that those areas are in shadow. And then in the very dark valued areas where to give the impression of depth, and areas that are in the background there, I've also used cool colors there, but very dark valued cool colors. And then around the leaves and on the flowers themselves, I've used very bright green tone, warm tones to give the indication of sunlight. And that concludes my mixing greens part 2. This is just a small sample of what's possible, but I hope it gives you some idea of the directions you can go when you stop taking your colors straight off your palette and begin mixing with some of the other colors that you have. You'll find that you'll have a more accurate representation of the colors that occur in nature. Rarely do colors coming straight out of the tube represent accurately the colors that you're seeing in a natural landscape setting. I hope these 2 videos on mixing greens has been helpful. If you have questions about my materials, you can go to the studio page of my website, rsurowiczart.com. And if you have specific questions, you can email me at contact@rsurowiczart@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.